Story 1. I've been a paramedic for 8 years now, and let me tell you, you think you've seen it all until you haven't. Most of our calls are genuinely serious medical emergencies, but occasionally we get those calls that make you question humanity's common sense. I chose this profession after my younger sister was saved by paramedics during a severe asthma attack. Watching those first responders work with such precision and care made me realize that's what I wanted to do with my life: help people in their moments of genuine need. My partner and I work 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer when emergencies demand it. We've handled everything from heart attacks in shopping malls to delivering babies in elevators. The job isn't glamorous, it's exhausting, sometimes heartbreaking, but ultimately rewarding. We're the first line of help when someone's world is falling apart, and that responsibility weighs heavily on us every single day. It was mid-July, probably the hottest day of the summer. The temperature had climbed to 95 degrees by noon, and the humidity made it feel like we were working inside a pressure cooker. My partner and I had just finished a particularly rough call involving an elderly patient with heart problems. It was the kind of call that reminds you why you chose this profession. Every second counted, and our quick response likely saved his life. We were exhausted, but that's part of the job. You push through because someone else might need help. We had just finished restocking our supplies and were about to grab a much-needed coffee when the emergency dispatch call came in as code 1-inch highest priority. The location was the local grocery store, and the dispatcher's voice was tense. No clear details about the nature of the emergency, just that someone was in desperate need of immediate assistance. When we get calls like this, we assume the worst: heart attack, stroke, severe allergic reaction. You name it, we prepare for it. My partner, who's been doing this job even longer than I have, immediately hit the lights and sirens. In this job, you develop a sixth sense about calls, and something about this one felt off. The dispatcher seemed confused when relaying the information, which is unusual. Still, we treat every high-priority call with the same urgency. Better to be overprepared than sorry. We arrived in record time, lights flashing, siren blaring. Several shoppers in the parking lot looked alarmed, probably wondering what terrible thing had happened inside the store. I grabbed our primary response kit while my partner got the stretcher. We rushed through the automatic doors, scanning for someone in distress. The store employees were pointing us toward the front registers, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and annoyance, not the usual worry or relief we typically see. What we found instead was a woman in designer clothes, standing at the checkout counter, her face red with anger rather than any medical condition. Her shopping cart contained what looked like enough groceries for a small party, but her attention was focused on several bags of what appeared to be fancy ice cream. Let's just call her Karen, because that's exactly who she was. Karen, finally, you're here. This is an absolute emergency. Ma'am, where is the patient? Karen, patient? I'm the one who needs help. My ice cream is melting. I looked at my partner, thinking this had to be a joke. The kind of prank call that sometimes happens, though usually not through official emergency dispatch. It wasn't. Karen, I just spent $50 on premium ice cream, and my car's air conditioning isn't working. I live 20 minutes away, and it's all going to melt. You have to take it in your ambulance. Ma'am, this is not an appropriate use of emergency services. Karen, of course it is. You have a climate-controlled vehicle, and I'm a taxpayer. I pay your salary. My partner, ma'am, we need to keep our ambulance available for actual medical emergencies. Karen, this is an emergency. Do you know how expensive this ice cream is? It's imported from Italy. You can't expect me to let it melt. The store manager had approached by this point, looking mortified. She was a middle-aged woman who clearly had experience dealing with difficult customers, but even she seemed taken aback by this situation. Store manager, ma'am, we can hold your ice cream in our freezer until you can arrange proper transportation. Karen, absolutely not. I demand to speak to these paramedics' supervisor. This is unacceptable. I have a dinner party in 2 hours, and everything needs to be perfect. By this point, a small crowd of shoppers had gathered, some filming with their phones, others just watching in disbelief. A young mother with a crying baby quickly walked past, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. Karen, you people don't understand. I'm an influencer. I have over 10,000 followers who depend on me to show them the finer things in life. This ice cream is for my content. She then pulled out her phone and started dialing emergency services again, right in front of us. Meanwhile, she positioned herself in front of the store entrance, preventing other customers from entering or leaving. Several elderly customers with walkers were stuck inside, unable to leave through the only accessible entrance. Karen. Yes. Hello? I need to report these paramedics for refusing to help me. Send someone immediately. This is discrimination against content creators. An elderly gentleman trying to leave spoke up from behind her. Elderly customer. Young lady, I need to get to my doctor's appointment. Karen. Just wait. This is more important. While she was making her third emergency call in 5 minutes, 2 police cars pulled up. Turns out the store manager had called them when Karen first started causing a scene. The officers looked familiar. We often worked together at accident scenes and other emergencies. The police officers quickly assessed the situation, and their expressions went from concern to increasingly annoyed as Karen tried to explain her emergency. One of them, a veteran officer I'd worked with many times, was already shaking his head. Police Officer 1. Ma'am, are you aware that misuse of emergency services is a criminal offense? Karen, but they're refusing to do their jobs. Police Officer 2. Their job is to save lives, not deliver groceries. You've tied up emergency resources that could have been needed for actual emergencies. Karen, this is an actual emergency. My ice cream. Police Officer 1. Ma'am, you're being fined $1,500 for misuse of emergency services, plus an additional $500 for blocking a business entrance. Karen, you can't do this to me. I'll sue all of you. Do you know who I am? My followers will hear about this. Police Officer 2, and will need to confiscate the ice cream as evidence of the incident. Karen, what? You can't take my ice cream? I paid for it? This is theft. Police Officer 1. Actually, we can. And we will. It's evidence of misuse of emergency services. The best part? While Karen was having her meltdown about her melting ice cream, one of the officers carefully packed her expensive ice cream into an evidence bag. The younger officer was clearly trying not to smile as he labeled each container as Exhibit A through Exhibit F. Last I heard, it was sitting in the police station's break room freezer as evidence. They ended up escorting her out of the store while she threatened to call everyone from the mayor to the president. She even tried to live stream the whole thing to her followers, but apparently her phone's memory was full. The store manager apologized to us probably a dozen times, even though none of it was their fault. The elderly customers were finally able to leave, and several thanked the police officers and us for handling the situation. The real kicker, we found out later that her car's air conditioning was working perfectly fine. She just didn't want to wait in after-work traffic with ice cream in her car. Apparently, her time was too valuable to sit in traffic like everyone else, so she thought she'd get a police escort home via ambulance. Instead, she got a $2,000 fine and no ice cream. The story spread quickly through our first responder community. The dispatch operator who took her initial call told us that Karen had actually tried to make it sound like a medical emergency at first, claiming she was having a crisis. When pressed for details, she admitted it was an ice cream emergency. The dispatcher had tried to explain that this wasn't appropriate for emergency services, but Karen had insisted that she would die if her ice cream melted. Sometimes I wonder if she learned her lesson, but considering she tried to appeal the fine by filing a complaint against both the paramedic service and the police department, I'm guessing not. The appeals board had a good laugh over that one, from what I heard, and doubled down by making her pay the court fees too. She even tried to argue that her status as an influencer made her ice cream essential business equipment that we were obligated to protect. The judge was not impressed. The next day, someone from the store showed us a social media post she'd made about the incident, painting herself as the victim of a corrupt system that didn't understand the needs of modern digital entrepreneurs. The post didn't get quite the sympathy she was hoping for. Instead, several of her followers pointed out that they had family members who were first responders and couldn't believe she'd waste emergency resources over ice cream. In our line of work, you learn to take the good with the bad. For every entitled Karen who thinks an ambulance is her personal delivery service, there are dozens of genuine emergencies where we can make a real difference. Still, this call has become something of a legend in our department. Whenever someone complains about a rough day, someone else inevitably asks, "Yeah, but did you have to deal with the ice cream emergency?" Story 2. I never thought I'd have my own entitled person story to share, but here we are. After 15 years of running my software development company, I finally decided to treat myself to something nice, a brand new Genesis GV80. One of those luxury SUVs that turns heads. I had been driving my old Honda Civic since college, and with the company doing well, I figured it was time for an upgrade. The decision wasn't easy. I grew up in a middle-class family where we were taught to be practical with money. My parents always drove used cars, and I followed their example for years. But after successfully leading my company through the pandemic, expanding from just me and my garage to a team of 30 developers, and finally paying off all my student loans, I decided it was time. The moment I walked into the Genesis dealership, I fell in love with the GV80. The pearl white paint, the burgundy leather interior, the smooth lines, it was everything I dreamed of. The salesperson probably thought I was crazy because I spent almost an hour just walking around the car, taking in every detail. I'd only had the car for 3 days, and I was still in that honeymoon phase where everything about it made me smile. I was stopping by my favorite cafe for my usual afternoon coffee break, a tradition I started when I first launched my company. It's in a nice part of town, and I'd never had any issues there before. I parked right in front of the cafe where I could see my car through the window. Old habits die hard, I guess, especially with a new vehicle. The cafe was busier than usual that day. A local tech company had just moved into the building next door, and there was a line of people waiting to order. I didn't mind. I was checking some work emails on my phone while waiting. That's when I noticed this woman circling my car through the window. At first, I thought she was just admiring it. People had been doing that a lot since I got it. But then I saw her pull something out of her bag. It took me a few seconds to realize it was a coat hanger, and she was actually trying to break into my car. I rushed outside immediately, nearly knocking over a table in my hurry. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Karen, oh thank goodness, can you help me? I locked my keys in my car. That's not your car. That's my car. I just bought it last week. Her face instantly changed from fake sweetness to pure rage. It was like watching a mask fall off. Karen, no, you're lying. This is my car. I know it is. Look at my parking permit. She pointed to a parking permit hanging in my car's window, the one the dealership had given me. Ma'am, I have the keys right here. That's the dealer's permit they gave me when I bought it. I pulled out my key fob and unlocked the car, making the lights flash. She actually stomped her foot like a child having a tantrum. Karen, you stole it. You must have stolen my key too. I'm a single mother. I need this car. I deserve this car more than you. Do you know how hard it is raising 3 kids alone? They need to get to soccer practice. Look, I'm calling the police. Karen, go ahead. They'll see that this is my car. I have photos. Photos of what? My car that I bought 3 days ago. Karen, I have photos of my car. Same color, same everything. Ma'am, Genesis sold thousands of these in pearl white. That doesn't make this one yours. She tried to grab my key fob, but I stepped back and got into my car, locking the doors immediately. I started dialing 911 while she began pounding on my window. Karen, get out of my car. Get out of my car right now. My children are crying because they missed their car. I got through to 911 as she actually climbed onto the hood of my car, like full-on mounted it like she was in some kind of protest. Me. Yes, I need police immediately at Coffee Bean on 5th Street. There's a woman trying to steal my car, and now she's jumping on it. Karen, I'm repossessing my vehicle. This is a legal repossession. I have rights. She started jumping up and down on my hood, making the whole car shake. I could hear the metal creaking. Dispatcher, sir, officers are on their way. Please stay in your vehicle and don't engage with her. Me, she's literally jumping on my car right now. She's going to cause thousands in damage. Karen, asterisk screaming at bystanders asterisk, he stole my car. Help me get my car back. I'm a single mother. My children are suffering. By this point, a small crowd had gathered, many with their phones out recording. The cafe manager came out too, along with several customers I recognized as regulars. Cafe manager, ma'am, you need to get down from there right now. I've called the police. Karen, mind your own business. This is between me and the thief. He probably stole it from someone else too. Look at him. He doesn't look like he could afford this car. Regular customer. Lady, I've seen him park here almost every day for years. He just got this car. We were all admiring it yesterday. Karen, you're all in on it. You're probably all thieves. Then she spotted a rock in the nearby decorative landscaping. She jumped off the hood, leaving deep dents from her shoes, and grabbed it. I could see in her eyes exactly what she planned to do. Karen, if I can't have it, no one can. My children deserve this car. Just as she raised the rock, 2 police cars pulled up with their lights flashing. The officers jumped out with their hands on their weapons. Officer 1, drop the rock. Drop it right now. She actually tried to throw the rock at my windshield, but an officer tackled her before she could. The rock went flying and hit one of the police cars instead. It took 2 officers to get her handcuffed because she was thrashing around so much. Karen, he stole my car. Arrest him. I'm a single mother. My children need this car for their future. Officer 2. Ma'am, what's the license plate number of your car? Karen, I don't know it by heart, but that's my car. I recognize the scratch on the hood. Officer 1. The scratch you just made by jumping on it? Me, officers, I have all the documentation right here. I just bought it 3 days ago. I showed them the paperwork, my license, registration, and even photos on my phone from the day I bought it at the dealership. They ran the plates and confirmed everything I said. The whole time, Karen was screaming about how I must have forged the documents and how unfair it was that people like me could afford such nice cars while single mothers suffered. Officer 1. Ma'am, where's your current vehicle? Karen, it was stolen. This man stole it. Officer 2. When did you report it stolen? Karen, I haven't yet. I've been too busy being a single mother. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges. Given the damage to my hood from her jumping on it and the clear attempt to steal and destroy my car, absolutely I did. They arrested her for attempted theft, destruction of property, and public disturbance. One of the officers told me later that she had a history of similar incidents apparently. She'd tried to claim other people's luxury cars were stolen from her before. The cafe manager and several customers gave statements about what happened, and multiple people provided their video recordings to the police. The cherry on top. One of the bystanders was a local news reporter who caught the whole thing on video. The footage ended up on the evening news, though they had to censor most of what Karen was screaming. During the investigation, it came out that she didn't even have a driver's license. It had been suspended months ago for reckless driving. She'd never owned a Genesis or any luxury car. She lived in an apartment complex nearby and would apparently watch the cafe parking lot for expensive cars to target. The police found a notebook in her purse with a list of luxury car brands and models, along with notes about their features and prices. She'd been planning these attempts for a while. The damage to my hood cost over $3,000 to repair. The dealership's body shop said her jumping had not only dented the hood, but also damaged some of the underlying structure. Karen was ordered to pay restitution, but I'm not holding my breath. She got 6 months in jail plus probation. The judge was particularly unimpressed by her long history of similar attempts and her complete lack of remorse during the trial. She actually tried to argue in court that as a single mother, she had a moral right to take expensive cars from privileged people. My car has a really good security system now, and I installed a dashcam that records even when the car is parked. I still love my Genesis, but I definitely keep a closer eye on it these days. The cafe manager gave me a dedicated parking spot right by their security camera, which was nice of them. The whole incident became a bit of a running joke among the regulars. They call me the car thief now, but at least they keep an eye out for any more entitled people prowling around the parking lot. Story 3. I never thought my wedding day would turn into something worthy of an internet story, but here we are. Let me give you some background first. My wife and I met during a hackathon 3 years ago. We were both working on different teams, but our paths crossed during a coffee break when we both reached for the last blueberry muffin. Instead of arguing about it, we split it and ended up talking for hours, completely forgetting about our projects. That pretty much sums up our relationship. We're problem solvers who'd rather find a win-win situation than argue. We spent a year planning our wedding, saving every penny we could from our software developer salaries. We're both pretty laid-back people, but we knew we wanted one specific thing: this beautiful outdoor venue overlooking the lake. The moment we saw it, we knew it was perfect. It had this gorgeous wooden pergola for the ceremony, a spacious reception area, and the kind of view you usually only see in magazines. We booked it immediately, putting down a substantial deposit to secure our date. The morning of our wedding was perfect: clear skies, light breeze, and just the right temperature. Our ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m., with the reception starting at 5 p.m. Everything went according to plan during the ceremony. We exchanged our vows surrounded by our closest friends and family, about 75 people in total. My cousin, who happens to be a corporate lawyer specializing in contract law, was one of my groomsmen. I remember joking with him during the rehearsal dinner about how he probably wouldn't need to do any legal work at a wedding. Oh, how wrong I was. The ceremony ended beautifully, and we took our photos while the staff transformed the space for the reception. The caterers had set up an amazing buffet. We'd chosen a variety of international cuisines to represent both our families' backgrounds. My wife's aunt, who runs a bakery, had created this stunning 3-tier wedding cake with hand-painted fondant designs that matched our invitations. We were just waiting for our DJ to announce our first dance, scheduled for 5:45 p.m. I was catching up with some college friends near the gift table when I first heard the commotion. At first, I thought maybe someone had dropped something, but then the voices got louder. Me, did you guys hear that? Friend, yeah, sounds like someone's arguing at the entrance. That's when I saw her. A woman in a designer dress, let's call her Karen, was gesturing wildly at our venue coordinator, her face turning redder by the second. Karen, this is unacceptable. I specifically called this venue 3 times, saying we needed it for my daughter's sweet 16. Do you know how much preparation we've done? Do you know who my husband is? Venue coordinator, ma'am, I've checked our records multiple times now. You never made a booking. We have no record of your calls, and this couple reserved this space a year ago with a proper contract and deposit. Karen, I called dibs. I told your staff we wanted it. That's basically a verbal contract. My daughter has been dreaming of this venue. As I walked over to investigate, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Behind Karen was a small crowd of people, probably around 30 of them, all dressed for a party. They were unloading cars packed with decorations, pink balloons, sparkly streamers, a sweet 16 inches banner, and even what looked like a small DJ setup. Excuse me, what seems to be the problem? Karen, finally, someone reasonable. Look, this is supposed to be my daughter's sweet 16 party. We need this venue. You can have your wedding somewhere else. You're already married now, right? The important part is done. My wife, this is our wedding reception. We have a contract, and all our guests are here. Karen, well, we can share. This venue is huge. My little princess deserves this space. Just look at how upset she is. That's when I noticed the teenager standing behind Karen. The girl was wearing a puffy pink dress and looked absolutely mortified. She kept tugging at her mom's sleeve, trying to get her attention. "Daughter, Mom, please stop. This is horrible. We can go somewhere else." Karen, "No, sweetie, this is your day. You deserve this venue. Everyone, start setting up. They can't stop all of us." Before anyone could react, Karen started directing her guests like a general commanding troops. They began barging in, carrying tables and decorations. Two men started moving our gift table aside. Another group began setting up their speakers right next to our DJ booth. Then it happened. In their rush to set up, someone knocked into the cake table. Time seemed to slow down as I watched my wife's aunt's masterpiece wobble, then tilt, then crash to the floor. My wife, who hadn't cried once during our emotional ceremony, burst into tears. That's when my cousin stepped in, phone already in hand. "Cousin, ma'am, you need to stop right now. You are trespassing on private property and destroying personal property. I've already called the police." "Karen, you can't call the police on me. This is a public venue. We have just as much right to be here as you do." "Cousin, actually, this is a private venue that has been legally rented for a private event. You are criminally trespassing, and you've just destroyed property worth several $100s. I specialize in contract law, and I can assure you that calling dibs is not legally binding." Karen, "Oh, so you're some hotshot lawyer. I'll have you know my husband plays golf with Judge Robertson." Cousin, "That's interesting, considering Judge Robertson retired 3 years ago and moved to Florida." The police arrived remarkably quickly apparently. They had a patrol car nearby. 2 officers walked in, taking in the scene of chaos before them. One of them started talking to my cousin while the other approached Karen. "Officer, ma'am, I need you to explain what's happening here." Karen, "Officer, thank goodness. These people are trying to steal our venue. We called dibs months ago." The venue coordinator stepped forward with a tablet, showing the officer our contract and payment records. Meanwhile, Karen's daughter had started crying. "Daughter, Mom, stop it. You're ruining everything. You didn't even try to book this place. I heard you tell Aunt Susan you were just going to show up and make a scene until they gave it to us. You do this every time. Remember my 8th birthday when you tried to take over that other girl's party at the skating rink? Or my 12th birthday when you made that scene at the restaurant? I hate you. I'm calling Dad right now, and I'm going to live with him." Karen's face went through a fascinating series of color changes. Then, in what I can only describe as a complete meltdown, she lunged for our backup cake tier that the catering staff had managed to save. "Officer, ma'am, don't." But it was too late. Karen grabbed the cake, clearly intending to throw it, but the officer caught her arm. In the struggle, she managed to smear frosting all over her designer dress before being handcuffed. "Karen, this is assault. I know my rights. I'm friends with the district attorney." "Officer, ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing and destruction of property. You have the right to remain silent." As Karen was led away, still shouting about her supposed connections, her daughter was on the phone with her father, who apparently lived only 20 minutes away. The remaining guests from Karen's party slunk away, looking embarrassed. The venue staff was incredible in the aftermath. They helped clean up the mess and rearrange everything back to its original setup. They even offered us a partial refund, though we insisted they keep it since none of this was their fault. My wife's aunt, who apparently had dealt with wedding disasters before, had left a backup cake at home just in case. She returned within an hour with a smaller but still beautiful cake. The daughter came back before leaving with her father. She was still crying and apologizing profusely. "Daughter, I'm so sorry. I begged her to just book a regular venue, but she insisted this was the only place that was good enough. She's been getting worse ever since Dad left. She thinks she can just bully her way into getting what she wants." We found out later that she did move in with her dad permanently. Karen ended up having to pay a substantial fine, cover the cost of the damaged cake and decorations, and do community service as part of her plea deal. The venue also banned her permanently and updated their security protocols. Our reception got back on track after about an hour delay. Our first dance was a little later than planned, but when my wife and I finally got to share that moment, it felt even more special. Our guests were amazing. Everyone pitched in to help clean up, rearrange things, and get the party back on track. Someone even started a collection to help pay for a replacement cake, though we insisted the money be donated to a local domestic violence shelter instead. Not exactly how we planned to spend our wedding day, but it became a story that our friends still talk about years later. Every anniversary, my wife's aunt makes us a small cake with a handcuff decoration on top, her way of turning the memory into something we can laugh about. And sometimes, when we're facing challenges in our marriage, one of us will turn to the other and say, "Well, at least there's no Karen with a cake," and we can't help but smile. Story 4. I'm a single dad who's been working in the technology industry for over 15 years. After my wife passed away 3 years ago, I promised myself I'd do everything I could to give my son the best life possible. He's the only family I have left, and seeing him happy means everything to me. It hasn't been easy juggling a demanding career with being a single parent, but we've managed to create our own little routines and traditions that make our life together special. Our Sunday morning pancake experiments have become legendary in our neighborhood, some attempts more successful than others. Like that time we tried to make blue raspberry pancakes that ended up tasting like cough syrup. But it's these little moments, even the failures, that keep us going. My son has shown incredible resilience through everything. He's had to grow up faster than most kids his age, but he's never lost that spark of childhood joy that makes him who he is. Last summer, I had to attend a major tech conference in San Francisco, where I was scheduled to present our company's latest innovation. Since it was during my son's school break, I decided to take him with me. We rarely get to travel together due to my work schedule, so I wanted to make this trip extra special. I spent months saving up my airline miles and finally managed to book us first-class tickets. My son had never flown first class before, and you should have seen his face when I told him it was like Christmas morning times 10. The weeks leading up to the trip were filled with excitement. He researched everything about San Francisco, made lists of places he wanted to visit, and even started learning about the history of the Golden Gate Bridge. It warmed my heart seeing him so enthusiastic about something we could experience together. The day of our flight started perfectly. We got to the airport early, had a nice breakfast at one of the restaurants, and my son couldn't stop talking about how cool it was going to be to sit in the fancy seats. During pre-boarding, he was practically bouncing with excitement. Once we got on the plane, he was already settled in his window seat, excitedly looking at the planes outside and taking pictures with the tablet I got him for his birthday, when I heard someone clearing their throat loudly behind me. "Karen, excuse me, but I think there's been a mistake. That's supposed to be my seat." "Me? I don't think so. I booked these seats months ago." "Karen, well, I have VIP priority status with this airline, and I always get window seats. That child doesn't need a first-class seat anyway. He probably won't even appreciate the premium service." "Me, ma'am, these are our assigned seats. You can check your boarding pass for your correct seat number." "Karen, do you have any idea how many miles I've accumulated with this airline? I'm a platinum member. Let me speak to that boy." Before I could stop her, she leaned over me, getting uncomfortably close to my son. "Karen, hey, sweetie, you don't really want to sit by the window, do you? Big boys sit in the aisle seats. Why don't you trade with me? I'll even buy you a candy bar from the airport shop." "My son, Dad." I could hear the uncertainty in his voice, and it broke my heart. This was supposed to be a special experience for him, and this woman was trying to bully him out of his seat. "Me, please step back. He's not trading seats. This is his first time in first class, and he's staying right where he is." "Karen, this is ridiculous. Do you know who I am? I've been flying with this airline for 20 years. I have meetings with CEOs. I demand to speak to the flight attendant. This is completely unacceptable." Her voice was getting louder with each word, and other passengers were starting to stare. A flight attendant quickly approached our row, maintaining a professional demeanor despite the obvious tension. "Flight attendant, is there a problem here?" "Karen, yes, I have VIP priority status, and this child is sitting in what should be my seat. This is age discrimination. I have important business meetings in San Francisco, and I need the window seat to prepare properly." Flight attendant: "Ma'am, could I see your boarding pass, please?" Karen: "Here, and I want this resolved immediately. I can't believe I'm being treated this way." Flight attendant: "Ma'am, your assigned seat is 4C, not this window seat. These passengers are in their correct seats. I'd be happy to help you store your luggage once you move to your assigned seat." That's when things got ugly. Karen suddenly grabbed my son's arm and tried to pull him out of the seat. Her fingernails were digging into his skin, and I saw the fear in his eyes. "Karen, this is absolutely unacceptable. This is what's wrong with society today, kid privilege. Parents thinking their precious little angels deserve special treatment. When I was his age, I sat where I was told. This generation is completely spoiled." My son started crying, and I immediately stood up, forcing myself between them. I could feel my blood boiling, but I tried to maintain my composure for my son's sake. "Me, don't you dare touch my son again. What is wrong with you? He's a child." Several passengers were now watching the scene unfold, many with their phones out recording. Another flight attendant rushed over with the head purser, who quickly assessed the situation. Head purser: "Ma'am, you need to take your assigned seat immediately, or you will be removed from this flight. Touching another passenger, especially a child, is grounds for immediate removal." Karen: "I'm not going anywhere unless I get a better seat. This is discrimination against loyal customers. I'll have all of your jobs for this. Do you know how much money I spend with this airline every year? I'll call your corporate office right now." The head purser made a quick call, and within minutes, 2 airport police officers arrived at our row. The other passengers were now openly glaring at Karen, some making comments about her behavior. Karen: "Oh, you want to play it this way? Fine. I'm a paying customer, and I know my rights. This is going straight to my lawyer. You'll all be hearing from them." She was escorted off the plane, screaming about lawsuits and discrimination the entire way. As she left, several passengers applauded, and a few came up to check if my son was okay. One kind elderly woman even gave him a chocolate bar she had in her purse. We thought that was the end of it, but 2 weeks later, I received notice of a lawsuit. This woman was actually suing the airline and us for emotional damages, claiming she suffered severe distress and professional embarrassment because she had to sit in an aisle seat for her business meeting. She even claimed that missing her crucial window seat preparation time had cost her an important business deal. The court date arrived, and I took time off work to attend. I wasn't about to let her get away with traumatizing my son. Our lawyer assured us we had nothing to worry about, especially since multiple passengers had sent in their video recordings of the incident. The judge took one look at the security footage the airline provided, showing her grabbing my son, and you could see his patience evaporating with each passing second. "Judge, let me get this straight. You assaulted a minor over a seat that wasn't even assigned to you, and now you're suing for emotional damages. Am I understanding this correctly?" Karen: "Your Honor, my status with the airline clearly entitles me to certain privileges and the emotional distress of being publicly humiliated." Judge: "I've heard enough. Case dismissed. Furthermore, you will pay all legal fees for both the airline and this family, and I strongly suggest you find a different airline for your future travels. If I see you in my courtroom again for anything similar, the consequences will be much more severe." Karen stormed out of the courtroom, but not before threatening to appeal and ranting about how the justice system was biased against successful businesswomen. Her lawyer looked mortified and actually apologized to us on the way out. The airline ended up banning her from all future flights and gave my son and me lifetime priority status as an apology for the incident. My son was shaken for a while, but he's doing better now. We still fly together when we can, and he always picks the window seat. The incident taught him something important, though not about standing up to bullies or the importance of justice. But that sometimes the best view isn't just out the window. It's the people around you who stand up for what's right. Last month, when we took another trip together, he gave up his window seat to a little girl who had never flown before. He did it completely on his own, and I've never been prouder. He said he wanted her to have the same excitement he had on his first special flight. Sometimes the worst experiences bring out the best in people, and my son is living proof of that.